This is Julia with iCadenza, and I'm here with Shigemi Matsumoto, who is a wonderful soprano and also a voice teacher, and I'm so thrilled to be here.
Thank you very much.
Well, my first question for you is, what first drew you to the stage?
I think when I was a child, I was in elementary school in Los Angeles, and they took us to Guild Opera at the Shrine Auditorium. It's one of the largest venues, I think, in the western United States. And they were presenting Cenerentola. And a lady was singing in the last act, the aria Nacqui alla fanno. And I looked at her, and she was singing and sang beautifully, and there she was at the center of this energy of the stage, and I said, I have to do that one day. That's that spark. I'd already had piano lessons and ballet, but singing I'd never seen in opera, but it was because of that that the little spark took place, and that's how it started.
And then you had an incredible career for over 22 years. Have there been any highlights that you can recall, any particular things that stand out thinking back?
I think that having met Kurt Herbert Adler was a huge impetus in my life. I had some wonderful guidance and support in my undergraduate work. I never went to a graduate degree, but Kurt Herbert Adler, the head of the San Francisco Opera, was a gentleman who trusted me and gave me a lot of opportunities, some which I did not deserve, but he believed in me. And I think he told somebody from Europe that she was raised on my milk, and that's kind of funny. But he was a grand impresario. He ran one of the finest companies in the world. Many people thought his casting was even more informed and more innovative than even some of the other great houses around. He was a great man, and we all miss him very much. Yes, that was a very important thing. And my European debut at the Théâtre de la Monnaie as Susanna in The Marriage of Figaro, working with such wonderful international artists as I did, conductor from Germany. That was really wonderful too. But along all of this were some great moments, and when I run into my fellow Adler Fellows or people who toured together, all of us in Western Opera Theater, some of my colleagues say that those were the best days of their lives. They were great. The Western Opera Theater. I wonder if they still have that. I don't know. But it was just wonderful, and the collaboration and kids growing up together on a bus and coming into Arizona to many farms and singing for Indians, the American Indian. It was just amazing. And I still stay in touch with some of these friends. It was great.
Now, your career took off really early on.
It did.
What were some of the challenges with that for you?
Well, fortunately, I went to a wonderful college here in the San Fernando Valley, Cal State Northridge. And my first teacher, David Scott, was very supportive. And before I left that university, I left with 8 major roles. The program
Incredible.
was very supportive of me. And so when I auditioned for San Francisco, I think Mr. Adler saw somebody on stage who felt comfortable and who felt confident and put out, a presentation of a performance. And so that part was pretty easy, going into a debut of Gerhilde in Die Walküre, of all things, after having sung Pamina in the Merilla program. For whatever reason, he thought that was right for just a debut. And there I was in a cast with people like John Vickers and Régine Crespin. Oh, it was amazing. And so that was kind of creepy because you have to enter as Gerhilde and sing the first Hoyo to Ho on a rake stage on a mountain. It's amazing none of us died back there with the kind of scaffolding. I mean, I wonder if they had OSHA back then. We almost would fall down, but somehow Providence guides you. Musical cues, you're sure-footed, even with, the spear on your head. Oh, it was amazing. And so that was pretty amazing to have an orchestra that big. We never had one like that at CSUN. And, but I don't know, it just felt right. And I'd had dance training, and I felt comfortable on stage because I had been given that much experience. My most amazing experience was one year when I had done Adina in Western Opera Theater in English. but it was a matinee and evening cast, and the matinee lady, as Mr. Adler said, she pooped out, and so I had to fly because I treasured our relationship. I was living in New York by then, flew overnight on a red eye to get to San Francisco to sing Adina, half in Italian and half in English,
Wow.
for the matinee, because I couldn't learn the Italian overnight. And so Susie Webb was the prompter, and she would feed this to me. And Randall Baer, who was the conductor, later talked about how my English would come in, and then the Italian would be "è fatto." You know, it was really funny. But one of the reviewers at the Chronicle said Miss Matsumoto resembled like an American tourist in Italy.
That's so funny.
I have so many stories, and throughout my touring in recital and with orchestra throughout the United States and into Europe, there are funny stories like that. Being introduced as Shigemi Matsumoto was quite a highlight, and all of these little funny names came out in the South. Not sure why, but Shy Gemini,
Wow.
Jemima, and Marty was in New York, and somebody said, "Would you accept a collect call from Miss Matsumoto?" So be happy you have a very beautiful name that's simple. Have you ever had any?
Do I have a simple name? I
Well,
don't know. Well, my last name is certainly a
right.
mouthful.
That's
I've heard
right.
a lot of versions of that as well. I know how you feel, but it makes life more interesting.
It does, and I use the illustration. Think if she gave me an apple. At one point, a woman reintroduced me as "she have you." She conjugated it.
Now, you just mentioned Marty, your husband, Marty Stark, who
Yes.
was a manager at Columbia Artist Management International for so many years. How did his career play a role in yours, if any?
Well, I guess I first played a role in his career because at the time Cammie came to me to want to represent me, Marty was in law school. And he read that contract and said, "There's a lot of funny things in here." So he negotiated the contract, took out a lot of things, and they were so impressed with him, they offered him a job. He started on the West Coast, and then there was an opening in the East Coast office, and they moved us. By then, I felt kind of ready to move to New York. I was contacted originally by Nellie Walter, who managed the careers of Caballé, Tebaldi. There were a couple of other major things. I thought, she wants me. But she saw me singing Frasquita in San Francisco. I think for a young singer, the showcasing of oneself in some major venue makes that step a little easier. A competition or just the proof of you're on stage. They can see that. They can see better through that than an audition.
Now, I know that Marty never managed your career.
No, Nellie did.
Was it helpful to you to have someone on the other side, so to speak?
Very much so. The business of the arts management area is something that most singers don't know. I certainly didn't. And when Marty would describe these things to me, and then I would tell my colleagues, they'd say, "Can we meet with Marty so that we can learn about what it is that why contracts the way they are? What am I really getting? What's being left out?" And that type of business acumen is, some people have that naturally. I have friends and colleagues, I think, who think that way, but many singers don't. We practice too hard. We're involved in what we do so much that we don't look at that unless our brain is there. My brain was never there. And so that's probably why God said, well, we need to have somebody in her life who's educated and sees the bigger picture. And so it was very helpful to me. And he would even say to me back then, "You need to stay in touch more with Nellie, because that personal relationship is what that keeps them charged up." And my husband tells a story about one of my peers who just called every day to Nellie and Ellie Miller and said, "Well, what have you done for me today?" I would never have had that kind of umption and gumption, because I would have thought it would be annoying. But after many, many weeks of everyday calls, I think Nellie said, "Well, we have got to get her a job. I can't take these calls anymore." So she got her a cover contract at the Met. No more calls, because this girl has a job now and can help her family. Her husband was a plumber. And that's it. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. But the style of this is very important. You have to know how to say the right thing to the right people. The components to have a singing career are enormous. We want to pare it down to the simple things, but you got to have the goods. And you have to have the nerves to do this. The silver linings in this business are magnificent, especially the hardest knocks. Those are the silver linings. That's where you build your character, and that's when you say, oh, I can do, I'm moving on. And I think most all of my day, 7 hours per day, is spent not only in pedagogy, but psychology.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the most important components in succeeding as a human being. And so it is a great privilege. I feel like I should pay them most of the time.